Thank you, BCDA President and CEO Dizon. Ladies and gentlemen, the presentations of the economic agencies will be available for download from the Investor Relations Office website, which is www.iro.ph. Also, everyone is invited to like the Investor Relations Office's Facebook and Twitter account, which are Think Growth, Think Philippines, to get updates on the Philippine economy. We now move on to the Q&A session with the Infrastructure Cluster. May we invite again on stage our moderator, Assistant Secretary Tony Lambido.
Morning again, and may I call on stage the members of the Infrastructure Cluster, Secretary of Public Works and Highways, Mark A. Villar, Transportation Secretary Arthur Tugade, Information and Communications Technology Secretary Eliseo M. Rio, and President and Chief Executive Officer of the Bases Conversion and Development Authority, Vivencio B. Dizon. We also have as resource persons, in case there are questions directed at their agencies, Undersecretary Art Bongcato of the Department of Tourism, Undersecretary Elaine Pascua of the Department of Education, and Undersecretary Amy Neri of the Department of Social Work and Development. So, Secretaries, with your permission, we'll jump right into the questions from Slido. With 57 votes, how can we move people and not cars? What's the program of the government for urban mobility infrastructure? Secretary Tugade.
If we are to recall and revisit the presentation earlier of Secretary Mark, the foundation for that mobility has been laid. So that you will see that there are constructions on road and infrastructure, there are constructions on the seaport and the airport and everything. But what is important here is to assure that we move people. In other words, you have to have volume, and that is why we are putting transportation and train mobility. We are doing, in terms of road, the PPP, point-to-point service. We are doing a lot of things, even in terms of airport improvement. In fact, only of late, the President has mandated that Sangli has to be open commercially by the end of this year. And so it shall be. So as you can see, there is an overall effort to decongest. But let me just add, the decongestion in Metro Manila has to have an effect on the provinces and on the various regions. How? Remember that we are an island, we are an archipelago, and therefore there's got to be mobility by air. And that is why, ang isang ginagawa namin, yung tinatawag natin ng night rated capacity. You know, in the past, most of the airports, commercially airports at that, stop operation at sunset. So that what we did was to increase mobility by putting or making our airports commercially night rated, so that they can still operate after sunset. And more importantly, most of the flights are direct to NAIA, Terminal 1, 2, 3, and 4. What have we developed? We have developed international airport, and we'll be creating international airport so that the mobility will be directed instead of congesting it in Metro Manila.
Related to that, sir, do we have a comprehensive plan to decongest cities around the country to make urbanization manageable for all stakeholders?
Well said. Let me put my statement in perspective. Number one, the Department of Transportation has laid the groundwork and the example of decongesting Metro Manila by moving its offices from Ortigas to Clark. Moving government offices is one of the factors that is critical in making sure that you decongest movement, moving away and shying away the government offices and putting them in other places other than Metro Manila. And the Department of Transportation has set that example. And I understand that right now our government under the Duterte administration, there is an honest-to-goodness effort to move other offices in Clark and other provinces. This is a primary way of helping decongest Metro Manila and the cities by moving offices out of where they are presently located now.
Acting Secretary Rio, is there a connection to online connectivity?
Yes. Remember, the President signed the telecommuting law. That means you don't even have to move people because by giving them better connectivity, they can do work, they can have their lessons at home. That's really, because the two main reasons of traffic is people going to work and people going to school, no? And that can be solved by ICT. So that is where we are going.
Thank you, sir. We have a question with a named questioner, Mr. Mar Gonzalez. Can we please find you so that you can ask your question? Can we have a raise of hand, please? Mr. Gonzalez? Yes, please. You got 72 votes.
Hi, hello. My name is Mar Gonzalez from DBP Daiwa Capital Markets. My question is, how does the government address the delays and challenges on the infrastructure projects to make sure it finishes within timeline?
Okay.
Secretary Tugade.
Number one, if you were to recall the speech and the presentation earlier of Sec Sani, he mentioned one thing. He said that the economic group, this administration, is doing a very bold move or had formulated bold action in order to address the effect of the delay in the approval of the budget. And this, we intend to do a catch-up mode. We'll be on a catch-up mode. Second, how do we address the delays? Simple. We are doing now 24/7 construction formula, where originally before, when you have a budget, when you have a project, you do 8 hours to 10 hours. Now we are doing 24/7. How do you think can we do a catch-up, for instance, with Sangli if we will not do it in 24/7? Question may be asked, how about the range when it comes? Answer, but there are certain things to be done in a project that is not totally dependent on weather, which you can do even when there are rains. So these are the things that are being right now. Next point, and I have to underscore this point. How do we address the delay? You know, there is a very intimate and close collaboration between all the departments in this Duterte administration. Noon, nagpapatayugan ng ihiyan. Ngayon, we are working closely in order to achieve the mandate and the directive of the President. And that is why you have a very close coordination with Public Work, with Transportation, with BCDA, with the Department of Finance, with Budget, the Office of the Executive Secretary. That is the formula, the cohesiveness and the mutual support within the bureaucracy in government.
And Mar, since we have you, perhaps you can ask the other question that you typed in because it also received quite a number of votes.
What are the government's short and long-term plan on resolving the traffic in Metro Manila? Recently, the President mentioned that it would only be 5 minutes travel time from Quezon City to Makati. How can it be solved?
Secretary Villar.
Thank you for that question. Well, when you talk about Metro Manila, you don't have to look further than EDSA as the symbol of congestion. And it was when he ran, the President's, ang pangako po ni Presidente ay tatapusin niya po ang traffic sa EDSA. When I presented earlier, in order for us to do that, we computed we need to take out 250 to 300,000 cars from EDSA daily in order for it to revert back to an acceptable level of traffic. The Skyway, once it's completed, will reduce the traffic count by 100,000. When you finish the connector, that will likely reduce it at least 50,000. When we finish the C6, that will reduce another minimum of 50,000. When we build the bridges across Pasig, yung Santa Monica Loton, that's projected 50,000. The wider Estrella Pantaleon. When all these are finished, we'll be able to bring back EDSA to its former, to a former state which is acceptable in traffic. So rest assured, this dream of EDSA is not a dream. It's come from the point of inevitability. We will decongest EDSA. And with regards to the 5 minutes, the Skyway from Makati to Quezon City, you can get there in 5 minutes, and we'll be delivering 90% of that by this year.
Secretary Villar, if you could maybe say a little, please.
Thank you, Secretary Villar and Secretary Tugade.
Thank you, Mar. Secretary Villar, perhaps you might as well also tackle the next question, resolving issues of right-of-way. And how have you been doing this?
Alam niyo po, nung pumasok po ako sa DPWH, marami kaming minanang proyekto na sobrang delayed. In fact, some projects, in 3 years, ang right-of-way lang na natapos, 12%. So we had to look at it from a systematic perspective. There was no infrastructure and there was no accountability that would allow us to expedite the right-of-way. So we created individual teams per project in order to really give accountability for the right-of-way acquisition of especially these major projects that we knew would have a high impact on our infrastructure goals. And with regards to right-of-way, really, there's a process. It's just a matter of training, creating the infrastructure. Remember, we have eminent domain. The process is clear. If you want to acquire right-of-way, you make an offer. If not, we go to expropriation. When we deposit the zonal value, the court will immediately give us, will shortly give us the writ of possession. Then we can go in. It's very clear. The process is very clear. It's just a matter of creating the infrastructure to make that process more expeditious. So that's what we have done. We've created the special teams. We've created the accountability, the monitoring system. And that's why right-of-way under the President's term is much, much faster, at least 3 to 4 times faster than it was in previous periods.
Thank you, Secretary Villar. And another thing that might help is Package 3 of the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program on property valuation. Secretary Rio, you wanted to add something on the 5-minute travel.
Okay. We are convincing the telcos to come up with application so that people don't have to travel. They can transact business online. Basically, JICA said that we are wasting 3.2 billion pesos a day. No? This could be money that can go to the telcos if they just provide the necessary application so that people don't move. We have about how many thousands of small meetings in Metro Manila, no? Now, if people don't have to go into these small meetings, that will reduce cars in our roads by about, we will eliminate about 100,000 a day of vehicles in our roads. You know? So we are telling the telcos, people are throwing away 3.2 billion pesos a day. Why don't you get a part of that?
Thank you, Secretary Rio. There is a question as well on connectivity as being a success factor in implementing the economic agenda of the country. Do we have a digital transformation strategy, and could you please share a few key characteristics?
Yes, digital transformation is already part of the fourth industrial revolution. We have really to improve our infrastructure, and the President has done that well. First, coming up with more competition by having the third telco, and having the telcos come up with or making better their telecommunication services. By having more infrastructure, we have our Build program is to make more telecommunication towers. We are targeting 50,000 because we have one of the lowest tower density, not only in this region. We need around 50,000 more towers, and we have attracted 23 tower companies that will invest in the Philippines, put money here in the Philippines to build these towers so that this can be leased out to the different telcos and other telecommunication companies. No? So yes, internet penetration of 1% will be a 0.65% in our economic growth.
Thank you, Secretary Rio. President and CEO of the BCDA, Clark City is going to be the first fully integrated smart and green city. I assume that smart includes connectivity.